Oh, why it's like that. 2 seconds, guys. Cool. Yes. All right, guys. Welcome to another live. I still could see. Hold on. Is that better? Yeah. That's my monitors right here. Welcome to another live show, another live She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking this video, subscribing to the channel. Let me know if you can see me and hear me. You guys always know technical difficulties are a thing around here. So let me know ahead of time if I need to switch some things up. Let's see. Don't really need to show that. Do we? Okay, cool. Yeah. Let's go ahead and really get into it. Guys, we're going to be talking about obviously ANDREA Berta today. He was announced yesterday as Arsenal's new sporting director, replacing Edu Gaspar. And so this video is going to be about the very first signing that ANDREA Berta needs to make this summer. Yesterday I had done a last minute, like spur of the moment stream because David Ornstein had dropped the bomb about Arsenal's growing interest in Victor Gyökeres. And so if you want to see a video just mostly on that, you can watch that one on my channel after this one. That's one where we kind of just more went through Victor Gyökeres in general. What do we like about him? My friend Gabby was on there. And so that was more of a deep dive, semi-deep dive, because it was just an hour long, but on just Victor Gyökeres and what he could bring to the club and whether or not I want him here and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And also getting your guys' opinion, because this Victor Gyökeres definitely divides opinion. I think he's somebody that ultimately will not get the sign, like the golden seal of approval from every single Arsenal fan, maybe like Isak would. And, you know, so I think it was an interesting conversation. You know, we got both sides of the argument and everything in between. So again, if you guys want to watch that, that is up on my channel as the last live stream before this one. So after we get off of this one, you guys can go back and watch that. Who's all in here? Masculine says Abel from Ethiopia. Welcome. Sai says kettle's going on. Yes, we could see her and hear you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Nico says, big up, Jess. Big up to you as well. Jay says, let's go, Jess. And Tabuki says, Gyökeres, not my favorite, to be honest. I think Osimhen is perfect for us. We lack real personality and a maverick. So, yeah, we talked about all of the, you know, ins and out of Gyökeres. And so I don't want to go fully into that because I really want to talk about this new sporting director. We did a full deep dive on like what he was like at Atletico, but we didn't really get to talk about, you know, what the clubs has said about him and, you know, what are expectations of ANDREA Berta based on his experience and ultimately what we need to get done. We are in the midst of a season where it is a very real possibility that we'll probably go trophyless again. And so Arsenal are definitely in a must-win now situation. And this summer is a continuation of the emergency that was the summer prior. The summer prior, last summer, was meant to be the big window that was going to basically finish off that front line. We were linked with Nico Williams. We were also linked with Sesko. We didn't get either one of those. We came out of that summer window with Marino, who we all know is pretty much like a squad guy. We came out with Calafiori, who probably does divide opinion, but I think most of us do think that he's a good player. And unfortunately, Raheem Sterling on a loan. And so we have compounded the work that needs to get done in this summer window, but there are priorities. I do think that there is kind of like a tier list of what's most important to get done and first, and then what can kind of be left to the end, or if we make the sales that we need to make. And so, and I want to get your guys' opinion on this too. What is the first signing, name and everything, that needs to come through that freaking door? You know, what is the first thing that needs to be there for preseason? Not, you know, trickling in right at the end of the transfer window, but the first thing smoking. What do you want to hear from, the talking heads, the in the knows, the David Ornsteins before the season even ends about like this person is pretty much already done? Because I do think Andrea Berta is getting going, but I have an idea of the way that I want this summer window to go. And it definitely starts off with a massive, massive signing. Amina says, hi all, welcome. Tabuki says the best thing about Berta is he does not have this younger player fetish. Sai says we finally get to find out if Edu was the issue, which I agree. We also get to find out whether or not if Arteta does get his attacking signings, whether or not it's him or it was just the fact that he didn't have good attackers. That's also something that we will find out. Burmese says, at this point, I just want a real striker and will prefer someone seasoned rather than a project player. Somebody said this the other day that they don't remember the last time a Premier League team won the league with a young project striker. And I do struggle to find an example of somebody that would have bought somebody like a Sesko and went on to win the league. I'm really trying to think because obviously City have won so many times in the last couple of years, and you wouldn't necessarily consider Holland a project striker, even with his young age when he first came in. He had a lot of experience. He definitely was not a project. He was a serious guy already. I don't think Chelsea had ever had a project striker. I'm trying to think, Man United maybe, but not a project. If they had young players, they were pretty much like the cream of the crop kind of guys, So I am struggling to find an example of a team that wins the league with a young up and coming type of striker. So maybe Arsenal do need to go a little bit older. And I saw the crash outs on the timeline yesterday about Gyökeres's age. To me was very like, how much longer do you guys want to be a project? Like 27 is not an old age in terms of, footballers, especially I feel like strikers in particular do stand the test of time a little bit like a little bit longer, and they do come into their prime maybe a little bit later. Scoring goals is the hardest thing to do in football, and honing that craft does take a while. Not everybody comes out of the fucking womb knowing how to put the ball in the back of the net. So, yeah. And so maybe Arsenal do need to go ahead and bring in somebody who's just kind of like ready to go, So I don't have like a problem with it. Michael, I don't necessarily see Sesko as necessarily like a project either. I think he's kind of on the line of like project and just a young player, kind of on that line. I think the point that I'm getting at is that needing a little bit of adaptation, maybe not the finished article, I guess would be more of a better example. Is like not necessarily a project, but like somebody that wasn't already like the finished article, or as close to it as possible. I do think Sesko has quite a bit of rawness, and when you add Nico Williams to that, which I rate Nico Williams very highly, but he definitely has a rawness to him as well. What can we achieve with a raw Nico Williams and a raw Sesko, both adapting to the league at the same time, both adapting to England at the same time, adapting to Mikel's system at the same time, both 21 years old and very much so rough around the edges? That I think is more the point than like the project. Maybe I shouldn't have said project striker, but you know what I'm getting at. Kevin says, I agree with you, Jess. If we get Sesko, that's a sign of no ambition. To be honest, I think we need to sort the BS around the team. I would like to see us get rid of Deadwood and sort a goalie and Zubamendi by the end of the first month of the window. Gyökeres, Nico Williams, Zubamendi, Garcia, Hato, Nipan would be a good window. And Michael says, I wanted both Gyökeres and Sesko last summer. And idealistically, you'd like to bring in both. Yesterday, we were talking about Ekitike, and a lot of people were saying they would love Ekitike if we already had like another more senior traditional number 9. And so I think we're still building the right balance in the striker department, which I think Arsenal have gotten it all the way wrong since Mikel has been here. There's no combination of Nketiah and Jesus and Kai Havertz and Jesus that's balanced. I think the perfect balance was not from Arsenal, but for Aston Villa. I thought that perfect balance, they got it perfect with John Duran and Ollie Watkins. You had your senior guy, that was tried and true, been there, done it, knows the league, blah, blah, blah. And then you had like this super, like, super talented young striker that was still adding things to the team. It wasn't like he was so raw that he was looking like Hoyland and those guys. So um I feel like that's the right balance to strike. Are Arsenal going to bring in two strikers? No. So we need to get that first one through the door, and then we can start looking at further down the line, moving on to Jesus, moving on maybe someone else, and then adding that younger striker. But right now, step one is get the first guy through the fucking door, because we still got to get the winger. We still got to get this. We still got to get that. There's a lot of things we have to get. Redemption says, if we get Sesko, I don't even expect to win the league next season before it starts, maybe a cup at most. Amina says, do you see Havertz playing as a 10 once we get a striker? Excuse me. No, I don't. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen, because I think bringing in a player like this is like a whole sidebar, and we'll get back to the Berta of it all. But just to answer this question, I just kind of feel like this will test whether or not Arteta's ego is more important than Arsenal winning. Like at the end of this summer window, it may be the case that he has Havertz, Declan Rice, Odegaard, and Zubimendi. And the hierarchy is such that I do not see him dropping his marquee signing in Declan Rice. I do not see him dropping his captain. And Zubimendi is somebody that he's chased for 2 seasons. And so what is the case that Zubimendi is going to hit the bench? What is the chances of Odegaard hitting the bench? What is the chances of Rice hitting the bench? I think that the hierarchy is such that those players would have priority in that midfield, because not only does it work better, but those players are just better suited for the midfield, and Havertz should be hitting the bench. He 100% should be a bench player. Now, having your highest earner be a bench player is problematic, and that's why moving forward next summer, beyond this summer, I'd be looking to move him on, as those wages are astronomical for somebody who's not starting. But his ceiling in our side is a bench player, and I still don't think I would be interested in seeing him at left 8 or in the 10. I just don't think he creates enough football. I don't think he's more than a wall pass. He hasn't really shown a lot of, the ability to get the ball and make something happen. It's pretty much very like basic for him, 1-2 touch, wall passes, backboarding the ball back to someone else. And so I'm not quite sure that that type of profile needs to be taking precedent over anybody else. I see him as the backup striker for the next season, and then we try to maybe move him on. He's just not a midfielder in the way that we would need him to be. And the person that he was at Leverkusen is long gone, so I watched a comp the other day and I was like, yeah, he's just not that player anymore. We just have to accept it. He'll never be that player again, so yeah, make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Now, here are some of the quotes that came out of the club in regards to Berta being announced yesterday. New sporting director ANDREA Berta checked in with members of the media at Soba Realty Training Center ahead of Mikel's pre-Fulham press conference. He basically said, yes, I think it's a big addition to the club, or this is Arteta. Yes, I think it's a big addition to the club, a big addition to the team, a team that is already formed with a lot of great people, garlic in them, whatever. So it's about building out that chemistry. And I believe Josh has a fully involved in the process as well. So we're excited to have him. You just met him. And straight away, the words that come out are always winning, improving, demanding. And he's a person who is very honest, very straightforward, and with a very clear vision of what he wants to do. So he's willing to join us. He asked if Berta, who is a hugely respected figure in football, brings him a wealth of knowledge and experience. He says, well, we certainly believe that he is someone who is going to impact the club. And he's got the experience, he's got the personality, the charisma. He strives to win as well. And the good thing is the strong team that we have already in place and all that work in recruitment. Jason James, he's like name dropping all the people that are there. And then this is more just like from, Andrea. He said, I'm thrilled to be joining Arsenal in what is a hugely exciting period for the club. I've watched with great interest the way that Arsenal has evolved in recent years, and I have admired the hard work that has gone into reestablishing the club as a major force in European football with the passion following around the world. The club has great values and history, and I'm looking forward to playing my part in shaping a successful future with the team. I cannot wait to get started in my new role, and I'm really looking forward to experiencing my first game at the Emirates together with our supporters. You know, he's been super successful. Like, it's 12 years at Atletico, played a major role shaping squads for 2 La Liga titles and the Europa League. They also won the Copa del Rey and the Super Cup and the Supercopa and all that kind of stuff. So, and they've reached 2 Champions League finals. And so, again, Atletico is not a team that's meant to win La Liga. It's supposed to be Barcelona and Real Madrid. So to be able to build 2 sides that were able to win the league and they're consistently in the top 4. When they weren't in the top 4, they won the Europa League. I think that bodes well for us, because I think we're in a similar situation where we're not necessarily a team that's meant to be winning. It's supposed to be City and Liverpool. And so you need to be able to take advantage of like times where the top teams are not at their best. And Atletico has been able to do that, where we have not been able to. We have struggled to do that. So he comes with great experience. He's very confident in what he can do. And so he's just the kind of person that I think we needed to change the tide around, get us some new links, get us some new ideas, and move us forward into this new era, because we're definitely in a different era now. We're not in the era anymore of building the squad and building us getting back to, Champions League football. We are in win now mode. And so I think everybody, the club and the fans, need to get into gear and stop going back into the project, the process, the blah, blah, blah. Fuck that shit. We need to start winning. Vic says we could have had Desire Doué instead of we went for Spanish Havertz. Now we cannot be signed unless we offer big money. Where is Edu? I don't know where the fuck he's at. I really don't know where Edu is. I don't know if he's at Nottingham Forest yet. I really don't know what the fuck is going on with him. So here's the thing. In my opinion, the very first thing that needs to come through the door, in fact, I want to hear that deals are fucking almost done before the season is even over, is that striker. It's not that shocking of a take. I'm not about to sit here and tell you the backup goalkeeper to get you guys to click. The first thing that needs to get through that door is a fucking striker. And the striker needs to be in preseason, learning Arteta's system and being embedded into the starting 11 right away. If that's Gyökeres, get him, because there's going to be plenty of clubs interested in Gyökeres. In fact, when you look at the group of Premier League sides just alone that are looking for a striker, Liverpool, Man United are going to be in the mix, Chelsea's going to be in the mix, and us, that's enough to know that somebody's going to get Gyökeres, somebody's going to get Sesko, and then the options maybe get a little bit scary after that, so we need to, if we have some sort of lifeline with Gyökeres, we need to go ahead and take advantage of that. What I'm expecting is for Berta to be able to get these jobs done, these deals done quickly and early. I feel like one thing that Edu really struggled with was getting deals done quickly. And I know that it was like, but these are big deals. I just think that he couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. So you know how we watch other clubs get deals done really quickly and it's like, they got that done quickly. That's kind of what I want. I really want it to be like, we want him. Before the season is done, Arsenal, serious interest. The talks are already being done, and then first couple weeks there's no European football in terms of like international shit, so besides some tournament that I think that they just randomly put together, we should be able to get this done quickly. We're not in the Club World Cup. There should be nothing stopping us from getting this done quickly. The striker has got to get done early. I don't care about the backup goalkeeper. I don't care about the left back. None of that stuff matters. You need the starting striker, but in the seat before we start our preseason tour. Don't want it dragging on until the season starts. None of that nonsense. He must get the striker in. That is the most important thing, because you know what it's also going to do? It's going to lift the group. There are soft factors at play with Arsenal that I think some players are just fucking jaded and coming into this season with the same starting, group of forwards, knowing that it ain't enough, feeling like we probably should have got it done. Players are talking about, yeah, the club's going to get this done. Of course we're going to bring somebody in. And then for Sterling to walk through the door on the last day, do you really think that that gets you up for the season? Sometimes you just need fresh blood. Sometimes you just need somebody running around that looks serious when, you get to training and you're like, oh, this guy is fucking for real. Sometimes you just need a boost, and that can only happen sometimes with new blood. I'm sorry, but that needs to be the first thing coming through the door. First thing. Done. Signed, sealed, and delivered. In fact, I don't think we should struggle to do the Nico Williams thing, because we've been talking to him for 2 years. Either you're going to get him or you're not. So I don't think Gyökeres or Nico Williams are those the players that we want. Get that shit done early. That should be the first thing coming through the damn door. I don't want to see any left backs or any goalkeepers until I see that. I really, really don't. Because the reality is the left back and the backup goalkeeper are not starters. But the left winger and the striker are starters, so they need to be in, training immediately. And so that needs to get done ASAP. Okay. Marco says, Kudus will be next after Gyökeres. You heard it here first. Frosty says also these Club World Cup is also a problem. Those clubs will be pushing their business forward to get in for that extra 120 million. O'Malley says they also sold and loaned players well. Vic says finally Saka and training picks. I was waiting for this day. Ash says, is there any teams in the Club World Cup that have shown will have an early window that might steal Gyökeres? I don't think so. I think the main clubs that are interested are like us and United, and I don't think they're in the Club World Cup. So no, I don't think so. O'Malley, thank you so much for your super chat. O'Malley says, I like Berta, not necessarily just because of the large signings, but because he was able to get the right players that made it like work, marquee and squad players. And, I think you make a really good point. I really do think Arsenal fans need to wrap their head around the idea that it won't be the same going after young players all the time. He's known for going to get like a Trippier or a Suarez or something like that, short-term kind of cheaper deals done to get the club over the line. He's very resourceful. I feel like he's a lot more, he's more flexible. I think he just knows how to like get things done, and like he has more creativity in terms of how he builds the squad, where we were very much so long-term, 22 to 25, this type of player, this type of it's like very much so like we have to think way long in advance. There was never an opportunity for us to bring in somebody short-term that was going to paper over the cracks. In fact, I think everybody would have choked if we would have brought in like a wash Suarez for 2 seasons, because it would have been, that's just not the plan. I'm tired of the plan. We are in a win now, and the plan is to win. So I like how he's super flexible. I like how he can get things done kind of like on the fly. He has a lot of good like connections, and he can also get people out, if it's not working out, and so I fuck with that. I really do. I think this is kind of where the direction that we need to go in. Mata says, I think Cunha is coming, honestly. I don't really. Anchor says, could we really get 6 players this window? Never seen that before. Max 4 players. I'm only expecting like 5 players and one of those being a goalkeeper. So 6 players feels like a little bit of a lot, but you know, who knows? Who knows? Jespin says, to be honest, we would be leaving the stream if you said backup goalkeeper. I mean, there will be Arsenal fans that are like, yeah, but the backup goalkeeper is so important. It's fucking not. Um, it is important, but it's not more important than figuring out the players that are going to be starting. You know, you've been talking to Juan Garcia for 2 seasons now. If you want him, go fucking get him. I'm not trying to hear anything about the backup goalkeeper being a priority. And, Berta is off in Spain trying to get that done for 2 months. That's essentially what happened to Edu. He was so focused on getting Juan Garcia done that we wasted so much time, and then he ended up having to get Neto because there was no time left and he was cup tied and ass. So I'm not trying to hear all that. The backup goalkeeper is way down the list. In fact, it goes right down, from striker, left center mid, or striker, left wing, midfield, left back, backup goalkeeper. That's the exact order I want to see players come in. I don't want to hear it. I'm not trying to see it. No fucking backup goalkeeper, no spending a month and a half trying to get the deal done for Juan Garcia and some left back. I'm not trying to hear it. The fuck? O'Malley says, should have bought Chesney back simple. I don't know why we make goalkeepers so convoluted. I get that like the new football thing is like the goalkeeper is so important and we got to play from the back and all that shit. But genuinely, I've never seen a club prioritize goalkeeper multiple windows, the number 2, the number 3, the pipeline, the reshuffling, the all this, but they ain't got no damn striker. I've never seen a club operate like this. Ridiculous. Vig says, we need a backup goalkeeper, but not for 25 mil. We are not doing this nonsense in phase 5.5 or whatever it is. If Barca could get Chesney and he's putting in 7 out of 10 performances, I mean, we're such a galaxy brain. Like there's just too many people that want to be innovative in situations where we don't need to be. Everything about Arsenal is overthinking every fucking thing. There's not anything that's simple. Goalkeeper, not simple. Left back, not simple. Midfield, not simple. Striker, not simple. Everything is overthought, and there just has to be some things that are simple. I feel like backup goalkeeper, striker, those things should be fucking simple. Get a guy that can kick the ball in the back of the net, get some guy that's been around the block for a couple of, for 10 years or so, and he's the backup goalkeeper to Raya. Because I'm trying to understand why Juan Garcia is coming to be a backup. Was Arteta serious about doing, I want to take one goalkeeper out at halftime and all that? Because if he starts next season on some bullshit, I just don't know if I'm going to be able to keep my thoughts in. I don't want to see any goalkeeper circus Soleil bullshit going on at the beginning of this season. That was so cringe at the beginning of last season, watching the Ramsdale bullshit and oh my God, Ramsdale and Ryan. No, I don't. All we should be doing at the beginning of next season is getting excited because we have 2 new attackers. That is it. That's it. Ash says, why are we always going for a backup goalkeeper is literally as good or better of what we have. Backups need to be emergency options that don't put our quality down massively. Simple as. That's what it used to be. O'Malley says, overthink and then finds out the academy player is actually the answer. Exactly. I don't really understand it. Remy says, I see Trossard and Ornelli going as well as Kivior and maybe Zinni, Jesus, Tommy would be on the chopping block if it wasn't for injuries. I mean, I do think that like we will see one strange big outgoing. I really don't, or like, the kind of outgoing that would shake, it would leave some Arsenal fans shook. I don't think it'll be Partey and Jorginho type of thing because we already know that they're going to leave on free because their contracts are running out. It's not going to be Zinni, because Zinni is, he's out the door kind of thing. It's not going to be Kivior. We already know he's 1 foot out the door. one of these players that we've had for a while is going to get kicked to the curb. I really just don't see a situation where we can just keep everybody and do the self-sustaining and all that kind of stuff. Like, somebody's gonna have to go. If I had to choose right now between Trossard and Martinelli, who should go, it's really a toss-up. It really depends. I mean, 1 minute it's Trossard, the next minute it's Martinelli, next time it's both. I really do think that, like, I would love to reshuffle the whole thing. If I could get Nico Williams plus, who do we say yesterday? Ademola Lookman and been both Trossard and Martinelli, I probably would, because I just feel like it's stale. But that's just because, like, we're coming off of the season. It's not been great. And, so maybe it's an emotional take, but I wouldn't mind if one of Trossard or Martinelli left for decent money. Trossard, Saudi, get that coin. Why are we the only ones who have not been blessed with Saudi coins? I don't understand. We are like, hello, can we get some of the Saudi coins? Why are we the only ones who's not getting any of the money? So Trossard for Saudi coins, or Martinelli to somebody dumb enough to give us 40 million for him. I'm taking that. I'm taking that. Yeah, but it could just be an emotional take, and so I could take it back, but it's one or the other or both. Reshuffle it. We need new life, something about this group of attackers that just it's like, this just, I don't want to see y'all no more. Everybody except for Saka really could go, to be honest. If I'm being honest, everybody but Saka could really go if it was up to me, but it's not. So Aha says, hey Jess, would you take Eze as an attacking mid signing on top of a striker and a natural winger as far as attacking signings go? If not, who else in that sort of mold? Rogers, Gibbs White, Baina. Yeah, I mean, I would take Eze as like I wouldn't take him as instead of a Nico Williams, instead of the left wing. I feel like we need a left winger. I don't want somebody that can kind of a little bit play there, but is really a something else. Nah, we need a left winger that's a good 1v1 good 1v1, pretty speedy, can create, moments of magic, can get on the ends of things, something like that. And the striker that is a bagsman. After that, you can bring in somebody like Eze that, kind of offers a little bit more of, if we're struggling to go up against a deep blocker, you want to add another attacker, somebody like that, that's different than Odegaard and different than the wingers that we have. I wouldn't mind that. I like Eze. I would take Eze as an option, but not an instead of. So yeah, of course, in that scenario, I would. I think Rogers would be way too expensive, even though I do like him. Like, everyone likes Rogers, let's be honest. But I think he'd be too expensive. Gibbs White is also good, maybe somebody like that. I love Alex Baina. I'm just a little bit like, is he going to be a little bit too lightweight? I'm not sure. We don't have a system that allows players not to have to be in duels. And so if you can't do a duel, if you can't stand the contact, we will not platform you in a way where you are free and have a free role to roam around. Nobody's got a free fucking role. Saka and Odegaard don't got no free role. So Alex Baina is not getting a free role. And I think that was a huge issue with Fabio Vieira. I foresee that also being an issue with Baina, even though I rate him very highly. Our system doesn't allow for that. And so I wouldn't take him. But Eze knows the league, got a little Disney story going because he used to be in our academy, would hit the ground running, would add goals, would add creativity, would add ball carrying, would add a little bit of je ne sais quoi. Of course, I would take Eze as an additional, to what we already are getting. DJ says, the fog and duels, man. Emily says, feels like they're going to prioritize Max Dowman for that, unfortunately. And you know what? To be honest, you guys, if you got it in your academy and you could save, the 60 million, why not do it? Like somebody said, and the academy player ends up being better. I think with Ethan, coming through and MLS coming through, I think we can at least trust that the ones that are coming through are good enough. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, MLS is the starting left back, and he has fully like benched Calafiori. Ethan is somebody that a lot of people would like starting above other players, or playing more minutes. I if Max Dowman is as good as people are saying he is, I know he's super young, but you know, you look at somebody like Eze, if he wouldn't be a natural starter, then maybe you could use somebody as Dowman to fill in those minutes, or maybe get somebody younger that's like more of like a, developmental or whatever. I don't know, but there's options. There's options for that. Um, Boy says, if you have a player in your academy, don't waste the money buying the same thing. We did that with Fabio. Um, Lionide says, would love seeing Odegaard play in La Liga again. More freedom. Nuances says, Williams has 15 league goals in 125 league games over 5 seasons, less than 20 total club goals in 140 games. People need to remind how he's an upgrade over Martinelli. I think it's an upgrade on Martinelli because Martinelli is a road runner that can't create his own chances, and his certain profile doesn't suit our style of play. So if you actually watch Nico Williams play and watch Bilbao play, which a lot of people do not, they just look at stats and then decide whether or not a player is better or worse. He plays in a not so great team in La Liga that fully requires him and his brother to create everything, and they don't get great service. They don't have great creative midfielders serving them. There's a reason why when he plays for Spain and when he plays for Bilbao, he looks completely different. But if you actually do watch, there are moments where he creates moments of brilliance just on his own. This isn't his best season. Last season was better. But when you look at the way that the two of them play, Martinelli plays in a good team and looks like shit. He does. He plays in our team. And if you're actually watching him play, we watch him every week. Martinelli does not look good. He's a road runner. He can't make decisions. His decision making is awful. He doesn't have the ability to create football. He doesn't have the next move. It's always needs to be a tap in or something really obvious. And even at that stage, it may not even go in. So I think when you look at the direction in which we're going, where the attackers are going to need to be able to create their own chances and are going to need to have the action after if they receive the ball in a situation on the edge of the box, there needs to be an action that they can take outside of just kicking it and letting the defender take it away from them, or kicking it out for a corner or going out the end line. Nico Williams is a much better fit for what we need, because when he gets the ball, he doesn't just run out the end line. He also can go to the end line or cut in. He can also go more central. He can dribble. He's good on transition. He's smarter, so unfortunately, stats don't always tell like the full story. And as somebody that has to watch La Liga for work, likes watching La Liga, likes watching Bilbao, and has watched a lot of Nico Williams, he's a much better option for us on the wing than Martinelli. Martinelli scores goals for us because he gets lucky. He scuffs them. We put him right in a situation to put the ball in the back of the net. If Nico Williams gets those situations with us, he'll score more. And if you watch him play with Spain, where he actually plays with good players, he looks fabulous. So he is definitely an upgrade over Martinelli. Martinelli is very, very average. It's painful. Blaze says some Arsenal fans still rate Martinelli, but even players like Spence and Ola Aina doesn't rate him. I mean, that was a painful interview to watch. I'm so sorry, but watching that interview, and they were just like, Martinelli is not good. I don't know why he has such a this high pedestal that he's on. If you watch football with your eyes, he just is not that good. So DJ says, has Martinelli ever scored outside the box for us? No. If Arsenal had built the squad properly, then Wanyeri and MLS wouldn't have featured much this season. The few bright sparks of a bleak season. O'Malley says, at least Nico Williams has moments. Boy says, Williams is proper. Stats watchers have no idea. You got to watch the game, guys. You got to watch the game. We literally watch Martinelli all the time, and he's not the guy. And just in reality, like, playing for Bilbao and playing for Arsenal are different. And Martinelli doesn't look good in a good team, but Nico Williams tends to look pretty good in a not so great team. And in fact, they would be a lot lower down the table if they didn't have the two brothers. They would be destitute. So yeah, I'm not saying he's the finished article and that he's perfect. He's definitely raw, but it's just about profiles at this stage. I don't think it's necessarily about who has more goals so far for whatever club they play for. It's when our wingers get the ball, you know how Saka problem solves. Either he'll go to the touch line, or he'll go to the line, he'll go inside, outside, he'll maybe make a cross, maybe he'll slip the ball in for somebody else, maybe he'll do a cutback, maybe he'll take a shot. Like the goal that he scored against, I forget who the fuck he scored it against, but he gets the ball, Odegaard gives it to him, and then he takes a couple touches and slams it in the back of the net. Martinelli could never do that because it would require him to make a decision outside of the action being spoon-fed to him. So that's how I'm thinking of it, especially when the left wing's options out there on the market are not just like ready-made. Most of them are raw, younger players or older players, so you kind of have to like, how would this player look in our system and what is their skill set? Nico Williams' skill set is so much more usable for us than whatever Martinelli's given us. Bulgarian says Krava said yes to PSG back in the summer. Lionite says twerking for Williams when Krava was available was painful. I mean, Kvaratskhelia is not available to us anymore, so I'm not sure what is the what is the point? I don't get it. Yo-Yo says, saw even Fulham's Robinson dismiss Martinelli. Blaze says Nico Williams was good against Holland. He was. Nico says, missed the fucking boat with Krava, shaking my head. And just because you miss Kvaratskhelia doesn't mean that everybody else who's not him is not a good player. We have to move on from that. We were never in the mix for Kvaratskhelia. We were never linked with him ever. So, I'm not going to lose sleep over a player that we were never linked to. And really, they're in two different stages of their careers. Kvaratskhelia had already played for a title-winning side and Napoli is pretty much a fully formed player. And to me, he is playing in a position or has kind of, came in, and now Barcola, a player who I feel like is more on Nico Williams' wavelength in terms of young player, still a little bit raw, whatever. And so that's what you're getting. Kvaratskhelia is a completely different status of player than Nico Williams. So I'm not going to kill Nico because he's raw, and he's just now getting started in his career pretty much, Boy says now they've seen Kvaratskhelia beat Liverpool. They want him. I think a lot of them wanted him before. Aha says Leicester at home last season with his left foot and maybe once or twice under Emery in the game versus Watford away. That's all I remember. Martinelli outside the box, really. I know what you're talking about, the Watford game away. The goals we scored in that game were outrageous, and he did score from outside the box, but Leicester in the 2022-2023 season when we beat them 4-2, that was outside the box. But he just doesn't play like that anymore, so it is what it is. But yeah, I think honestly, the left winger, striker, those are the first two things that need to come through the door. That is the work that Berta needs to get done the fastest. I don't really care about Juan Garcia, not really giving any shits about the left back right now. I know we need a left back, but there's priorities. And I'm also looking for some decent outgoings. It's going to be really interesting to see how he moves players on and if he's able to get better fees than Edu, because the excuse was always that our players have no value. And early days when we had big contracts for older players that are not very good, the Socrates, the Mustafis, those guys, I understood canceling the contracts. But now, I'm expecting a decent fee for Zinchenko, even though he's not the best player. Just because we don't rate our players doesn't mean that there's not somebody else that would pay decent money for them. Again, this is not Socrates and Mustafi at 30-something years old on really big contracts. These are quality players. We don't have any players outside of maybe one player who's ass, do you know what I mean, or not good at all, so I'm expecting fees to come in for some of these players. None of this barely able to get anybody interested in our guys. It's time, and Athletic did sell well, so I'm expecting some decent sales. Not amazing, I'm not expecting a miracle, but I'm expecting decent. Miko says, if anything, Barcola is more realistic one, and it's really a toss up between him and Nico, to be honest. DJ says, we got to snatch one of PSG's wingers if we're being real. Toan says, I wanted Krava when he was in Russia, JK. Bulgarian says, Edu got a better selling towards the end, but I get the criticism in the early years. In terms of getting one of PSG's wingers, I know that there's this idea that, well, if Kvaratskhelia is there, somebody's the odd man out, and so naturally somebody would want to leave. But I think the reality is that if we could build that type of depth at some stage, we would feel like it's normal. And because we never have that type of depth, and we always feel like somebody's going to be dying to leave if they're not playing, when we see somebody else with that type of depth, we're always like, oh, well, somebody's going to want to leave. But good teams, like, first of all, PSG are always guaranteed to win something, so they're probably going to win league almost every single year. They're going to win a cup as well. So when you know you're guaranteed trophies and you're going to be one of the favorites for Champions League, players will stay there even if they're not the first guy on the team sheet. And so not only do I not see PSG letting the Barcolas, the Doués, these types of guys leaving, they already have Dembele and Kvaratskhelia. That is sick depth. But we should be looking to build that level of depth and also be competitive enough where players won't be dying to leave. I think we convince ourselves that nobody would want to stay. But that's because we're not guaranteeing trophies. If you guarantee trophies, you can create that level of depth with a couple of older players and a couple of younger players. I'm not quite sure why people just think that because Kvaratskhelia went there, that Barcola is naturally going to be desperate to leave a team that's one of the favorites for the Champions League and is clearly building a really, really top side. He's from France and he's guaranteed at least one trophy a season. To do what? To do what? Yo-Yo says, I hope Berta is creative. I want to see player swaps and clever use of loans for outgoings and incomings, relationships formed with certain clubs, and flipping players for fun. Also, Liverpool have or FSG are starting to look at buying, I think, Malaga so that they can have a multi-club ownership. Arsenal are so behind. Like, we are eons behind the likes of Chelsea and Man City, and we'll end up being Liverpool in terms of being able to have different irons in the fire for recruitment and building the ecosystem where you can loan players out to your club, or how City are going to try to get Nipin, and instead of bringing Nipin to Man City, they're going to send him to Girona. So it's like a less pressurized way of developing the player under their umbrella. And then also they can pick up players like Savinho from there. We're very behind in terms of our scouts. Man City have more scouts than anybody else in Brazil. We probably have none. We are so behind the curve. Our academy is behind. The ecosystem that we build in terms of recruitment and talent identification is behind. And hopefully Berta can help with that as well, because the women's side is ass, the men's side is ass, and we are well behind like the other clubs around us. The first team is one thing, and that's because we've only focused on the first team. We haven't focused on anything else. But in this new era, I'm really hoping that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We have no feeder club. We're not getting any young players and sending them out on loan to develop and having them come into the first team later. The loan system for our academy is ass. Like, there's players that just go for free because they don't get out of the academy like ever. There's a lot of work to be done, and Berta is also going to have probably a say in some of that stuff too. So, I know that we're mostly just focused on the first team, but I think the ecosystem around Arsenal and the way that we do our recruitment and the way that we build up talent from multiple ways is really, really poor in comparison to the clubs that we want to compete against. Edu did suggest the multi-club system and was shot down by people in the hierarchy. So that's one thing that I won't shade Edu for. That wasn't on him. DJ says, per Murder Soccer, show your face. Big says, thoughts on Teddy's comments. Odegaard defines our way of playing. If that's the case, we are cooked. We got a left-footed anchor who refuses to use his foot, overcomplicates stuff, and is afraid of duels. I mean, I'll be honest, like, I really like Odegaard, and he is one of my favorite players, and I feel like a lot of this is recency bias. Nobody was saying this last season or the season prior. I think he's well within his right to have a poor season, out of his first poor season out of 5, isn't this like his 5th season or 4th season or whatever? And so 3 really good top seasons, 2 of which he was our player of the season. I think a lot of this is hyperbolic, and if we build our team around Odegaard, it's going to be the end of the world when, he was one of our better players last season. He was one of our better players the season prior. He was one of our better players the season prior. Like, he's one of the best midfielders in the league as well. Like, I'm not really on the same boat as everybody else is. Like, I'm just going to kill him right now because he's the main person I can kill. There's no Kai Martinelli. We've already put him in the dust. So let's get our pitchfork out on the next person. My main hope is that he gets back into form. When he played for Norway the other day, he looked like his normal self, but we don't play like that. And so most of our issues, I think, stem from Mikel's very rigid system where we don't access central spaces. It's very slow, it's methodical, it's patternized, it's very systematic, and that kind of stuff. And so I think Odegaard will get back into form. But if you want me to be one of the people that put my pitchforks out on him, I'll need to see him start next season poorly. I think a lot of this is super hyperbolic, really, really hyperbolic, especially in a system where we have probably the worst attack in the top 6. Get a striker and a winger and let's talk. Sparata says Barrett's a good example regarding the loans now in the top 5 for goal contributions across Europe and top flights. He didn't get a chance. Yo-Yo says Arsenal don't function as a big club. We function more like a brand. Bulgarian says the loan system needs to improve. Fact, that's an area I've always been frustrated with. Let's see. Yeah, it's definitely something that could be fixed. And so I want to see that type of infrastructure be built around, under Berta, and some of that stuff being addressed. But from the summer standpoint, I do really want to see those attackers come in first. I expect Zubamendi to come in. I know that they're saying Real Madrid is closed in on us, but Ornstein has said that, Arsenal expects Zubamendi to come in. He hasn't heard anything about Real Madrid's interest. So I expect Zubamendi to come in, and I expect that to just kind of happen, because we've been working on it for 5,000 years. But those attackers, I really want to hear some good news on that before the season even ends, that Arsenal are looking to wrap up that deal early. There's no reason for it to drag on. We've gone 2 seasons without touching the front line. So you should have done all your due diligence. You should know who you want to get, and you should be ready to attack it. The money that's available, whether we need to sell later on, the first money that you get needs to go to attackers. I don't want to hear you gave the money to Espanyol for Juan Garcia, and then you went out and bought a left back, and now we have to wait to sell to buy. If we have to do that, I will not be there, so whatever money that the Cronkies do give, or we already have, must go to the attackers first. I want to see them the first thing smoking. The first interview I want to see is of Gyökeres up there saying how he always wanted to play for Arsenal. He's always been a fan. He watched Thierry Henry when he was younger, and he can't wait to get started. That's what I want to see, not Juan Garcia. Nico says, one thing I will say about Odegaard is that needs conditions around him to be really good to perform. Like a Foden doesn't sit on the same table as Saka, Gabriel Saliba, etc. level of importance. Bulgarian says absolutely no excuses this summer, especially after 2 questionable windows. Exactly. Yo-Yo says Rice, Subi, Odegaard has to work. Otherwise, Arteta needs to be sent packing. Aha says also Jess on the stream you did with DG recently mentioned an Isak quote talking about him going to a club with European pedigree. That was a fake quote from a parody account, FYI. Oh, fair enough. I didn't know that. I thought he did say it, but I was like, oh, fair. You from LA? Yes, I am. And I agree with Yo-Yo that this midfield needs to work. I fear the wages in the squad will prove an obstacle with the necessary renewals coming. That's another thing that he needs to get done ASAP. Obviously we want to get Saka, Saliba, and Gabriel on new deal. I think Gabriel signed his new deal already. The other two will be more difficult. Idealistically, you'd like to be able to give the wages that Jesus and Havertz have to those two. The fact that really they have higher wages than Saliba and Saka is egregious. So how do we squeeze? Actually, our wage bill is not that bad though. Like it's still below most of the other teams in the top six. So, hopefully they've planned for this, but there's no way around it that if we get to the end of the summer and we have renewed Saka, Saliba, and Gabriel, two of those will be our highest paid and they'll be paid a shit ton. There's no way around it, but I'll take it. I'll take it 110%. And Big says Zuby signing makes no sense if we're getting Gyökeres. He's a transition threat. Where's the guy who plays through the middle? I'm not sure how it doesn't make sense. Zubimendi is going to sit at the base. He's a transition threat. I don't think Gyökeres is just a transition threat, but not quite sure. Nico says, imagine that against low blocks. Ash says, if you put Rice in the 6, who would you want at the 8? I'd go get Bruno Guimaraes. I just think that he's the right midfielder for us. I don't mind the hardworking midfield. Most of the top midfields in Europe are the hardworking midfields. They don't have number 10s. They don't have just one guy creating. That's something that I think we're stuck on because we feel like we don't have creativity. So that means we need a number 10. But really, they have attackers that just make it shake. You look at the attacking numbers for players like Vitinha and João Neves and Fabian Ruiz, who are playing in one of the best, teams in Europe right now. They don't have 10, 11, 12 assists. They're not scoring 15 goals a season, but their attackers are scoring a shit ton of goals, and that's because they're just fucking good. They can just give their attackers the ball, and Dembele gets it and creates magic. Doué creates magic. Barcola creates magic. It's not like they don't do anything, but I think we have a heavy reliance on our midfielders scoring and assisting and doing everything because our attackers don't do shit. They don't do enough. They need to be spoon-fed. Look at Barcelona as well. Pedri, look at his numbers. 10, 11 assists? No. 15 goals? No. Dani Olmo, 15 goals? No. 10 assists? No. They don't. But Lewandowski and Lamine Yamal and Rafinha are scoring a shit ton of goals. That is the remit. Liverpool also has a hardworking midfield. They don't really have a 10 either. They play with Szoboszlai, whatever. Is McAllister really a 10? Not really. Their attackers just make it shake, and we need attackers that make it shake because we're going to have a hardworking midfield. We're not going to have a number 10 or 2 10s and a 6 or whatever you guys are dreaming of. That's not the reality. And we haven't had that really ever, and we definitely don't have it now. Brian says Arsenal must move quickly on signings before big teams start to smile good things. Jagoon says might be me. I just don't rate Zuby like that. That's fair enough. I think Zubimendi, the things that he does doesn't. He's not dropping the shoulder and doing all this extra shit. So it's not gonna make people excited about him. So I kind of understand that. But I would ask the question, why do Arteta and Xabi Alonso and Real Madrid and, all these teams, why would they be interested in a player that's not very good? I guess that would be my question. I just don't feel like he does the sexy things. And I think because Arsenal fans want a different type of midfielder, the reaction is that Zubimendi is not very good. I think it's more just he's not your type of midfielder. He's a number 6 that's going to sit at the base. He's going to do things very simply. He's going to get the tackles in, and he's very high for interceptions and tackles and things like that. His passing numbers don't really show up on stats either. Like he's not getting a lot of assists or anything like that. But I have a hard time believing that all these teams and all these top coaches really rate him, but he's not good. Like I'm really struggling to connect the dots there. But is he what you want? Maybe not. and that's a completely different conversation and very valid. If he's not your type of midfielder, you're not going to rate him. But I really don't think he's shit. I really don't. I just don't think that he's a sexy signing. And Arsenal fans want sexy. That's why they don't want Gyökeres and they want Isak. It's not sexy. They don't want Zubamendi. They want whoever the fuck because it's not sexy. And I'm not really that fussed about it being sexy or aesthetically pleasing. I just want it to work. you know. Nico says, is Zubamendi progressive enough? I think we're beyond the whole idea that our number 6 needs to be our biggest creative midfielder, creating thingy. Partey is not particularly progressive this season. And we're doing just fine. I don't think our midfield, our DM needs to be, to me, that's woke. To me, that's woke, where the DM has to be the main guy orchestrating everything. I think he's progressive enough. I think if we just get attackers that know what the fuck to do, all these extra things about, yeah, but is our number 6 going to create from the base? Oh, but is our number 10 going to get 15 goals and 15 assists? A lot of these questions are solved if you just get better attackers. Our attack is so bad that we're trying to find other things. Like, it's really not that deep. Aha says, also, since we're shit at transitions and also punishing high turnovers where there's more space to exploit, we could do with forwards like Gyökeres who provide more threat and competence in that. Mata says, I want anything that'll fix the horseshoe of death. Nico says, Wharton would be a better pick for me, in my opinion. I do like Wharton. I don't think he's a 6, though. I don't think he's going to sit at the base of your midfield. I actually think he'd be better in a double pivot next to Rice, but that's not really how we play either. I like Wharton. Yo-Yo says, don't be fooled by stats. Iniesta and Seedorf were technical creatives without putting up numbers. It would be wrong to suggest that PSG's midfielders aren't creatives. I'm not suggesting that they're not creatives. I'm saying that the stats merchants of like, yeah, but he's not getting a lot of goals and assists doesn't mean that they're not contributing to the attack, but they're definitely not putting the ball in for Dembele on a plate. They're not, because if they were, they'd be getting the assist. They're not really doing those things, and our midfield is very similar. They're not going to do those things, but when we give the ball to Martinelli or you give the ball to Kai Havertz, you give the ball to Trossard, a lot of times nothing happens because they don't have the ability to create magic. They don't have the ability to create for each other either, so I'm not saying that they're not creative at all, but what I'm saying is when you look at the stat sheet and you're like, yeah, but Odegaard doesn't have this amount of assists. Well, neither do those players either. But the difference between them and us is that they can pass it off to attackers that have a brain, and that can actually create things. That's the biggest difference between us and them, Rock says, I agree with Jess, fix the left wing and striker and it creates more space for others to operate. And it takes the burden off of them to do fucking everything as well. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and get out of here. Tomorrow, obviously, it's Fulham. Didn't feel like we really needed to do like a full preview, but we'll do the match reaction after, like we always do. And then, we'll see what's going on for the rest of the week. And then we have Everton at the weekend as well. So post Fulham game, we'll do the match reaction and then we'll just see what happens from there. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel and all that kind of stuff on your way out. Hopefully Berta will get it going. We'll get some more Orny bombs. We'll get some more business done early, and also get in the comments afterwards and let me know what player you want to see walk through the door first, for the summer window. I would love to know what you guys think. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.